Particle is a global community that aims to bring art closer to people and people closer to art. We welcome the curious, contemplatives, and changemakers. Talks by Particle are collaborative, interdisciplinary, and give an immersive opportunity to exchange ideas about themes that matter. Students' Diary is a series of free-flow conversations between students to disentangle major issues and topics from the eyes of the younger generation. Please enjoy.
Hi everyone, I'm Sara from Permission Events Group in Culturit Bocconi. Our talk today is about sustainability. So, Culturit is an association present in many cities here in Italy, in many universities also. And its aim is consulting, training, and research in cultural sectors. And I'm here today with Eleonora and Letizia from Fashion for Future. There is another association here in Bocconi. And Majdouline, with a sustainability specialist in New Arts Group. So, please, Eleonora and Letizia, introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, thanks you so much for inviting us. And I'm Eleonora, and as Sarah has already mentioned, I'm part of Fashion for Future, and together with Letizia, we are actually co-founders of this association. And the aim of the association is spread awareness about sustainability in the fashion industry. And we focus on all the area of sustainable fashion, so from green industry to small business to vintage and secondhand. So
and hey guys,
something about the association.
So hi everyone, I'm Letizia. As Eleonora said, we are both members of the Bocconi Students Association Fashion for Future, and we are both co-founders. We have been blessed with the reach that we got through our association, and we write a lot of articles regarding sustainable fashion practices, and new innovative textiles. So if you're interested, please feel free to check us out.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming. And then we have a special guest here today. There's Majdouline. So please, Majdouline, introduce yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Majdouline. I'm Senior Sustainability Specialist for New Guards Group as part of the Farfetch Group. So it's nice to meet you and thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming so much. Okay, guys, so as you maybe understood, today we're talking about fashion and obviously about sustainability, which is the theme of our series. And we have so many arguments today, so it will be so much interesting. We can wait to have your comments, so please chat with us on YouTube and on LinkedIn. And I think we can start because I think one of the most interesting arguments about fashion and about sustainability is materials. Because, for example, we talked so much about, we are used to talk about secondhand and thrifting and these kind of things, but sometimes we can start from a more basic, starting from materials and garments, for example. But I have to say, I'm not so much keen these kind of arguments. So please tell me what you think. Because, for example, we were talking about the differences between the industrial materials and the organic ones. So please, maybe we can start from this.
Sure. Shall I go first? Since
sure,
I work with materials every day.
Okay, yeah.
I just come from a day of review as material too, so.
Oh, perfect.
So yeah, of course, materials are the first stepping stone, isn't it? I mean, if you make any calculations in any company, you're going to discover, if you calculate your emissions or your carbon footprint, materials are an integral part. So it's really the starting block where many companies are focusing on, and rightly so. It's really where the impact, along with manufacturing, often lies. I would say I do own clothes that are made of better materials, or how I call them, less environmentally destructive materials. For me, there is nothing such as simply a sustainable material. That doesn't mean absolutely nothing. But there are materials that are either next generation or that are, again, less environmentally destructive. You can have, anything from organic sources, recycled and circular sources, or you can also have what we often call next generation materials. And my specialty is really to find companies that invest and create new fiber, like come up with new concepts of developing fiber from other sources, either waste sources or like waste, or circular sources, or even creating from absolutely things that doesn't make sense just as an idea, but then that have like a beautiful outcome. As now we have lots of bacteria that's been employed to make new material, or it can be anything, as long as it's sustained with an LCA, or as long as it's sustained with actual data that can prove that it's a less environmentally destructive material, and it solves many problems in the value chain, because then material from farm to manufacturing to all the stages that it goes through, it's quite like you have to work with partners that can guarantee a certain attention in each and every step. So this second area is really what I'm excited about, and I think there is a future that lies there. I think that tomorrow every brand has to be compliant and has to integrate organic or recycled or less impactful fibers, and that's going to become the new compliance. It's going to become the new normal, doesn't it? And then extending this to innovation is really what I think is it's what's needed, and what's exciting too about the topic.
Yeah, that's really interesting topic. And yesterday was fun because we were talking with Letizia and Eleonora, and they told me, do you know any kind of garments, like organic garments and these kind of things? And I was like, yeah, I heard about orange fiber. And she told me, no, actually, that's not organic. So we have also these kind of differences, right?
Yeah, there's a huge. So I understood finally like the difference about different types of garments and their origin. This summer, I had the opportunity to look a bit more and delve a bit more into this part of the textile industry, and I noticed that a lot of materials that I thought were like of natural origins were not classified as organic materials, but rather as artificial materials. So I thought, this is interesting. I believe that not a lot of people know it, because if and like a garment is organic if it already has the fibers, and it needs to just be, there's less work involved into getting cellulose and then creating the yarns. Wheels for artificial materials, especially the organic, like the ones from with an organic origin, you need to first break down the material, create the fabric, obtain the cellulose, and then create the fibers. So that's why they're classified as artificial. And another thing is that if you don't know a lot about the different types of materials, like you don't know, for example, that lyocell is made from wood pulp or other organic materials, you don't really understand what you're buying, what the material is that you're putting on, because like also artificial materials, some are derived from petrol. So you have nylon, you have polyester, and you might want to think about, is it virgin, is it recycled, how am I going to use it? Because like obviously some type of material is more in line with certain types of activities. For example, polyester and nylon are really recommended for sports activities because they perform better. By understanding the different types of textiles, you can not only understand the impact they have on the environment, but you also can understand which one should you buy for what type of activity.
Yeah, the context and the durability and the quality, like that's also extremely important. I mean, for anything that's, fossil fuel based, my number one recommendation is to go with recycled sources always, although we still have the issue of the microfibers, for instance, and that's quite a big issue. So I'm always team natural, but I do understand the misconceptions that we have between natural versus organic or bio-based, natural, organic. I mean, each or biodegradable, like there's still lots of misconceptions or like straight out ignorance about these and it's also like, also regulators are not quite equipped to prepare the people for this kind of differentiations. So it's really the brand's role to provide criterias and guidance on what they, how they call, what they call, and really like label correctly what they're, the message that they're trying to get to the consumer. So there's lots of course, greenwashing happening in that space. It's quite a complicated topic, but as a consumer, I would always, I think, rely on third-party certifications. Like I think that claims, like vague claims made by a brand, often needs to be backed by either third-party certifications like GOTS, GRS, or players such as these, because then that's a guarantee that the brand is doing, is really like respecting and making the right claims. I mean, that's sort of at least a small guarantee, but it's one that I suggest to always follow.
Yeah, and actually, I think this is something that we as consumers don't even know. For example, how do you think we can find the new sustainable garments and how we can make people know them?
Mm-hmm.
That's sometimes maybe we were thinking about maybe if fast fashion industry is created like kind of green tag to put on these clothes, maybe we can. What do you think?
Which is what happens, no? Like those are what we call criterias. Often every brand or every group, they have a like let's call it a bible of what they define as sustainable or less environmentally destructive or straight up better or positive for the environment. Like each one of them call them a different way, and it's effectively a label, no? And a label, you can really set the threshold, the difficulty, the challenge that you're trying to achieve. Or sometimes it's really like things that are compliant with the law and are labeled as more sustainable products. So the consumer has, like, we have to know as consumers that every brand can have a different criteria, and every brand, the definition of what's sustainable for one is different from what another one is calling as sustainable. So that's the first thing that you need to know, and need to inform yourself on the website of the brand, for instance, on what the criteria is, like what does sustainable mean for you, what does natural mean for you, because if you don't if you don't want to get super technical to understand what's organic and what GOTS is regulating, at least you must know what the brand means with these like big claims that they make, no? So often every scheme, I don't want to mention any scheme in particular, but they all explain what's the percentage of better fiber also present in the garment. Sometimes this is something that I warn of, like just because you see this is an organic garment, that doesn't mean anything. How much organic fiber do you have? Are you following a third party scheme? So there's lots of things that as somebody that works in this world, I am aware of, but I understand that sometimes as a consumer is completely confusing.
That's one of the thing that we were discussing yesterday with Sara and Letizia, the fact that us that we actually care about sustainable fashion, we know how to find information, how to understand if something's sustainable or not. But for example, for a 16 years old that want to be sustainable but doesn't know where to start is definitely difficult. And for us, it's difficult also to try a way in order to inform people. And I think that social networks are doing a great job in this moment, especially TikTok and everything like that. But also in this case, we need to be very careful about what the information is actually true and what it's not, and try to avoid greenwashing, which is
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
always a threat, especially from bigger brands that are famous.
Yeah, and that's another interesting topic. And I'm curious because we can maybe ask to our listeners if you do your own clothes made up of new sustainable garments. And that's a really interesting question because I don't think I have any, for example. Do you?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I think that now the access, like, it is quite accessible to get a hold of an organic cotton T-shirt. Like, you can find it literally in H&M. Like, you can find it anywhere.
Okay.
So I do own that, and I also like to, I mean, because I'm a bit of a geek, probably one thing that I love and I shouldn't show to my friends just yet is like when we develop like new special materials. I do have those kind of samples, and I like to keep them as an archive with like next gen materials that I cannot wait for people to see out there in the market. So I think that people should also, especially like with next generation materials, there are still like a new development. We don't see as much product supply out there, but we should look for it, because once the consumer supports it, the brands can buy more of it, or can have more access of it and substitute what's worse, and so you really like supporting also like innovation is extremely key. And it just takes knowledge, it takes time. People maybe don't want to, maybe we're all a bit lazy, we don't want to research so much about something before buying it, but I think we have to do that, because that's going to drive a behavioral change, and that behavior is what ultimately supports new startups making amazing things and pushing for really futuristic stuff. So I think TikTok, Eleonora, was a great example. I think it's I see it. I also see people that like just straight up denounce things aggressively, and I think that's also something like it's not really a cool behavior where you like everything is greenwashing and people are super wary, because then a consumer is going to be so scared and they're going to be like, yeah, whatever, they're all greenwashing anyway, so why would I have to buy a more conscious garment? That's not also the case. Like, we have to be, I think the truth is somewhere in the middle, and information, taking
Yeah.
time to read,
Yeah,
no
I
way around
absolutely,
it.
I absolutely agree with you, and also because this things that it is called like perfection paralysis, which is
Yeah.
actually a phenomenon that basically say, okay, if I cannot be sustainable like 100%,
Oh yeah.
what's the point of be sustainable like 20%? Which
Oh
is
yeah.
actually
Yeah.
completely wrong, because we need to
Absolutely.
start from something. So even if at the moment, okay, I cannot be very sustainable because of different reasons, but if I don't start with something, that's no point at all. And I definitely think that about the sustainable garment, there are a lot of small businesses that actually produce stuff that are incredible, and they are not then known because, of course, they are small. So it's like easier probably to go to an H&M and buy a shirt that it's kind of sustainable. But I definitely think that we also need to research, as Majdouline was saying, the fact that we need to also get informed and try to, like, we have internet, we basically live with our phone, so we got the possibility to search for different brands. So it's very important for us also to, like, control and check the small business that are producing great stuff, and not
Yeah.
only the very famous big company.
Yes,
Absolutely.
something that helps me when, for example, I choose an article of clothing, or sometimes I don't know, I go shopping with my friends and they still love to buy fast fashion. I go with them. I try to look at like the labels and everything, especially the clothing, the textile composure like label, the tiny one with the washing instructions. So, and for example, I know as a brand, as a company that produces pretty sustainable fabrics, Lensing. So if I find the lyocell trademark, I know that garment is way more sustainable than maybe others that are sold in that store. And so I can find something that is not uber expensive or prohibitive and still buy it and still be informed. And I think that's something that needs to be shared more. I understand that, like, maybe looking at that tiny like fabric label to search which components are in your garment might be maybe a bit too much or might take a lot of time, but that's the most sustainable thing that you can actually do, because like sometimes you literally see on top of, like, on the big label with the prices, oh, this is made consciously, just to not be able to, just not to say sustainably, and that would be greenwashing. And then you look at the component, it's like 10% recycled polyester, 90% polyester, or maybe 100% polyester, and you don't know if it's recycled or not. So I think that helps, and it needs something that people need to look more at.
Yeah.
And also, like, big like mix. Another thing that's super simple that I always say to my sister or my mother is, like, when you see that a composition has more than 3 fibers already, like, get out of there, you know. When it's too mixed, there is no way there is no way to say that already. Like, it's not recyclable, and it's surely not doesn't have any, like, a good threshold of sustainable fiber either.
Yeah, you're right.
So when it goes beyond 2 mixed fibers, it's already a bit of a red flag for me, usually.
Yeah, and reading the comments, so we have a comment here saying that I'm buying from often from Uniqlo, which seems to have a good policy on sustainability. What do you think? Uniqlo is doing these kind of things?
I mean, a policy can you know, you can have different policies for different topics and pillars within the sustainability you know, framework. You can have social policies, you can have material policies, you can have different ones. I think one that I always look for, and one that it's not always super clear for consumers, I think materials already, like, people understand, you know.
Yeah.
When you see a good garment made of wool, you know it's going to last, you know it's going to be beautiful over time. But when it comes to the social aspect of, you know, the manufacturing, how that material was taken and manufactured and put together, you know, the trim and cut facilities or the factories, I think the schemes that cover that side of the business are quite complex for people. Like, nobody understands what an ASA 8000, for instance, when it's been there since the 90s, and it's like a super famous certificate for, you know, social aspects within the supply chain. So I think it's also the brand's role to explain a little bit more what they do in this sense, you know, for safety, for human rights, how they guarantee that living wage, or, you know, these aspects needs to be a little bit easified for consumers. Nobody has time to open a whole code of conduct and read all the practices that you do, you know, with factories. It's just impossible for anybody
Yeah.
normal to get on a Uniqlo site, you know, and read it all, like, clause by clause. So we have to simplify that aspect to it, and it is quite key too.
Yeah, you're right. In fact, Beatrice is saying in most stores it's super hard to find clothes that are not mixed with polyester, etc. I had to find cotton-only clothes because of a skin condition. It was a nightmare. So yeah, we totally understand you, and that's what we're saying basically. Yeah, that's a really interesting topic. And another important aspect I would say is that even if you find them, maybe they obviously cost more. That's another you know, point, because why a consumer should buy something that it's more sustainable if I can just buy a t-shirt on Shein that costs just €2.
Oh God, the whole Shane topic.
Yeah,
I don't know, like a day to talk about Shane.
Never bought on Shein, if I can say that.
We can talk about Primark.
Never. But
Oh
you
God.
know, most people that just don't know how these things work just don't understand what's the problem.
Yeah, I think especially right now, like consumers are super price sensitive, so they just go where they can find the best deal, honestly. which in some way it's very bad. But like the only thing that we can do is try to like spread awareness, try to speak about those topics, and try to like make all the people that probably are not there very interested about this topic or don't know a lot about it, try to like put them on the right track.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yes,
Shane,
also
lol. Yeah, that's like.
Yeah, that's
I
I love that comment. LOL, Shane. I mean, the whole Shane topic, it's funny, isn't it? It's like I've read their sustainability strategy on their website not long ago, and it makes me it's just like it's a joke. It's like, how
Yeah.
can you drop thousands of style per week,
That's crazy.
make sure that they are like, even just like if you think about something technical but useful for consumers, more sustainable fibers take longer times to be produced. So it is impossible to drop something weekly made out of, a better attribute. It's just like it's not, you cannot do it. The lead times are longer. You have to plan it way ahead. You cannot do different colors, different styles. It's just, so for me it doesn't make any sense. It's just like the whole business model. But what we can again, I can comment on Shane all day, but one thing that I want to get out there is we have the power. I think that we as people, like, we live for that Insta photo. We live for that
Yeah.
Insta moment, for the
Yeah, that's
instant
it.
gratification, for the look. So the way that we consume our clothes, the way that we approach them is different. Like, you buy something, you put it once and you forget about it. I mean, that's like the worst unsustainable behavior. So I don't think the bashing Shane is the solution. I think that we as people have to make wear it again cooler. We have to, we have to just like change our perception of garments.
Yeah.
We used to love the things that we own. We used to, I remember when I was younger, I would buy a piece of clothing that I loved, and I would want to buy it. I would want to wear it all the time.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
repeating it wasn't an issue. And
No.
now it's like almost shameful. If you have the same outfit
Yeah.
3
Yes.
days in a row in a week, it's like, oh, what?
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And
Also,
Lorenza is reminding us, what about the whole culture? And we also talked about it like on the last episode. And yeah,
yeah.
that's like one of the. I mean, on TikTok, they just come out on my For You page, always Zara, all time. Zara and Shane, I think. And Zara also is
the
another interesting
comparison
point.
between the two.
Yeah,
Right.
comparison between the
Combo.
cheapest one, the cheapest one, and they're always on my For You page, and that's like crazy because like every week is like new items, and they bring you to buy new clothes, I would say. So yeah.
However, I kind of think that this whole culture can also be shift to the like thrifting, because I've seen a lot of haul of thrifts.
Thrifts, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that it, of course, it's bad when like they just show things like buying on fast fashion brands, but I think there is a good way to talk about thrifting.
I still have a bit of an issue with hauls because they promote consumerism excessively, so. And also a lot of the content creators that do this, they try them on and then they send them back. So not only have you been stimulating consumerism, but then you also waste, like, you generate a lot of emissions just for the transportation of those garments, because like they're not maybe going to the store and then going back to the store and giving them back, which then again they need to be washed, they need to be ironed, they need to be put back. So there's not only time involved but also energy and consumption. But they also are not transparent about like what they do, what they wear. So I'm not a huge fan of it. I'm more a fan of, oh, look, I found this really cool piece of clothing. I really like this style. So let me show you how with this one piece of clothing I create 10 outfits.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Christopher is saying, so mass customization is out of the question for sustainable clothing. Well, what we will say.
Mass customization, as in, what's an example of that?
Okay, Christopher, let us know. What do you think? Yeah,
Yeah.
about this. And yeah, but yeah, he's saying waste not, won't not be thrifty. Yeah, and so fast fashion is dead. Well, no. I will say no. I think it won't.
I think it's as McDonald's and a Michelin star restaurant, isn't it? It's like you don't go to McDonald's every day, and you don't go to a Michelin star restaurant every day. So it's really how as a person you can find a balance. Like we all need, and we're all gonna go to H&M or Zara for that basic white t-shirt. It happened. It's gonna happen. Like let's be honest about it, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then taking that kind of behavior to, buying every week, buying every day, and that's the issue. It's not the reality itself. It's really how you approach it. As you approach anything, your diet, the way that you consume most of things in your life. And if we made that concept, if influencers could influence more in that sense instead of making hauls, then we would have a better world, I can guarantee, without killing anyone's business or taking jobs from people. I don't believe in like extremizations where you're like, no, death to this or death to that.
No. That's not the solution, I would say.
No, also because fast fashion price points, sadly and unfortunately, are something that some people can. It's something that some people can exclusively afford. They cannot afford to spend more money.
Yeah.
So the most important thing to me would be, in general, about the dignity of the person, but without going excessively. So, for example, I'm lucky enough I can afford to buy. For example, a wool jumper, a wool cardigan. Some people are not. So we shouldn't completely discourage fast fashion. We should encourage more sustainable consumption in general. So buy less, buy stuff that is durable, or at least treat it in a way that lasts for years. And then think about maybe have mostly neutral colors in your wardrobe, or mostly colors that go together. And then maybe I understand, like, I love fashion, I love buying fashionable stuff, so each season maybe I will buy a more trending piece of clothing, but I try to think, oh, how many times am I going to wear it? Can I wear it next year, or I will wear it just for this season, like a couple of times, and then it's done.
Yeah.
And then also do not like throw away your clothes. Like, for example, in my house, if there's a hole in a shirt, a business shirt, we just like tear it apart and use it to clean up the house. That way we don't waste the fabric. If it's something that we do not wear anymore, but it's still usable, it's still beautiful and everything, we donate it.
You can downgrade it.
You can donate to someone the clothing, because, like, for example, we go to the church next to our house and we donate the clothing. And people in need go and get the clothing, and we clearly want to be sure that it's in optimal condition, because we don't want to give them something that is that has holes in it and everything. But like, if you have clothing that have holes in it, either you can maybe try to find a way. So if you have the jeans and you have a huge hole, and you do not like the shredded jeans, you don't find them fashionable, you can still cut them and get shorts.
Yeah.
Which is what we used to do when we didn't have budget to buy new jeans every week. I mean, it was like the natural course of a garment, or it's like the collective, like the collector mentality, the curator mentality. Like when you used to buy a piece and you would be like, I'm gonna pay. Like when you receive a beautiful jacket from your grandmother, for instance, that happens to a lot of us. It's not like that behavior. We should just like buy with a perspective that we can pass down too, and it's something that we love and cherish, and even if it costs a little more, you can keep it for more time. It's more like an investment mentality.
Yeah, totally.
That's real value, like but again, I think I'm stating the obvious. I think we should still reinstate it, even if it's obvious. It should be out there.
No, you're right. I agree with you totally. And so basically, we can say there are many good behavior we can act like. For example, Beatrice is saying she donates old clothes as well. And in Milan, there are collection spots around the city. So we can have some behaviors like that. And maybe we can also talk about secondhand and thrifting, for example. That's something that's trending now, and I will say that's a good way to contrast fast fashion. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. First of all, I just want to make like a very brief distinction between vintage and thrift and secondhand, because I realized that a lot of people, like think that everything that is vintage is secondhand and vice versa, which is not super right, because with vintage we mean something that is actually from a previous collection, so we can say that it's old because it's from the past, while with second hand, of course, we mean something that was owned by another person before us. And of course, everything that is second hand is also vintage, because if there is a person before us that had that item, we can say that it's from a past collection, but not everything that is vintage is second-handed. Because an example is, like all these what happened to the Oscar, that a lot of talk about the fact that like Emily Ratajkowski wear this amazing Armani Privé dress from that is vintage because it's from another collection. It's from like 2011, if I don't remember correctly, or Kourtney Kardashian also wear a vintage item. But in this case, we're talking about dress that are vintage because they are from past collection, but they actually are new. Nobody wear them before. So I think there is a lot of misconnection about these things.
Yeah, totally. I didn't know the difference.
That costs thousands of money that we cannot all afford. So.
Yeah, exactly. So I think like a lot of people just like try use those two words in the same way.
Yeah. I think I was one of the person. Yeah, no, that's a really interesting point.
Yeah, because a lot of people say, "Oh my gosh, like Kourtney Kardashian wear a vintage item. She's so sustainable."
Yeah, no. Don't put your face under your
yeah.
Instead, if you want to think about secondhand on the red carpet, I often think about Angelina Jolie. She wears something, and then her daughters wear them during the red carpets. I find it, one, very cute, and two, it's nice because like that way they don't. These beautiful garments are not only worn once, and also like the daughters get to enjoy the experience. It's not as wasteful. I like it. I mean, still we're talking about red carpets, so it's not really going to happen a lot.
Yeah, and I really like the fact that when like a celebrity wear 2 times the same dresses for different red carpets.
And people had it, for
instance. It's like incredible.
Like super had the titles. Oh my gosh, it actually is something that
I must say one celebrity that I appreciate though is Tiffany Haddish. She really wore the same dress for multiple occasions, and I think that the way that she explains it is like I don't have money to spend on all these all these stylists and all the. It's just, I mean, she's real, like you can tell the people that want to get attention, and people that actually are fostering a better behavior or just like advocating better consumption behaviors, for sure.
Yeah, and also one of the most important, and I would say good part of them, second hand and these kind of things is that they are cheapest. So, but well, I think the problem, for example, and we also had like a discussion yesterday talking about differences between we consider, you know, secondhand and and how our parents consider secondhand. Because for us, I would say this is something that is becoming more and more accepted. But for example, if I say to my mom, "Oh, mom, I want to buy, you know, a second-hand jacket," she will be like, "Oh, that's not hygienic. I don't know, I make this stuff that, you know, it's just you have to wash it." It's just when you try things on in shops, for example, Zara, something like that, and you try them on, just maybe it can be worn by other people. So it's basically the same thing.
That's a good perspective. I never thought about that. It's true.
Yeah,
I
mean,
like some people in my family, some of my relatives are like, oh, that is like dead people clothing. That was so sad for me.
yeah.
Dead people, I
Yeah,
was like, what?
yeah,
Like,
there is
I
also this
understand
kind of,
some stuff, like clearly if it's something from the 1950s, the probability that that person is still alive is,
yeah,
depending on the type of clothing, is pretty low, but still, that's so sad.
And also that term is utilized like when the global north, so the northern part of the world, sends clothes to the global south, and those are called deaf people clothes, in like markets, like in Africa. That's how they are called. And this is like it's a sad thing, isn't it? Like we donate what we don't want anymore. So is that a donation? Like, is there any values in those? It's funny that you mentioned that. It's such a word full of it makes you freeze. You don't want to engage in that.
But that is also weird because I use a lot of secondhand clothing from my family members. So, for example, I use my old grandma's shirts because, like, she had some really nice silk ones. I use my mom's old jackets when she was my age. They still look beautiful. Like, people don't know that it's old, or in some case, like, really old.
yeah,
But again, it all comes down to the quality of what you bought initially. It's like, also, if you go thrifting and you buy something that was maybe worn once or twice and it's of low quality, yes, you're being more sustainable. But in the end, if it gets broken into wears, like, how sustainable did you really need it, and how sustainable were you?
yeah,
Something else, like another myth that I heard about thrifting, since we are talking about this, is like people come up with excuses like, oh, but thrifting means you're supporting gentrification. You're taking from a practice that was lower class and that's
yeah,
been with, higher, upper,
yeah,
medium
totally.
class, making it chicer, making it more expensive. And I'm like, first of all, there are enough garments for all. Like, this is no class issue. Even if you did that, there is enough stuff for everybody, like at any
Yeah,
price point, at any. I think that even like what's beautiful about this, like regardless of the sustainable aspect, is like whenever you go in one of those stores, it's as if like these resellers are curators. They have like an amazing eye. They pick and choose pieces that you want to own. So that's like a service in itself. It's they're not creating from scratch, but they are curating for you. So I always thought this excuse is like another myth that I hear out there. And no, you don't gentrify, you don't support gentrification if if you buy from thrift shops. That's like a
Also,
big
yeah,
myth.
there are different price points. So, for example, in Milan, we have Humana Village, which sells
yeah,
stuff like €5,
Yeah.
which is extremely cheap. And then we have Nastri e Cavalli, which sells all like vintage Chanel, vintage Versace. So it's a completely different price point. But
yeah,
still, everybody can find anything, because, like, again, if we think about Corso di Porta Ticinese, we see a lot of thrift shops that are not that expensive again.
Yeah.
So there is something for everyone. And also, if I can think of one issue regarding thrifting, is mostly sizes.
Sizes, yes. I was about to
Mhm.
add
For example, I'm not particularly thin. I'm not even, and I'm not
Overweight.
I'm not overweight. I don't want to be
Sensitive.
But so it's very difficult sometimes for me to find anything. So I find a cute skirt, and then I see it the size, and I'm like, I'm never going to be able to fit inside.
Especially like everything that is linked with plus sizes. I don't think that there are a lot of options for plus sizes girls in thrift shop. Because there are a lot of girls that are super thin and say, okay, I'm gonna buy from the kids section. And I am like I'm 6 foot, so I'm kind of tall. And
That's
it's difficult to find something that actually fits. So as Letitia mentioned before, I think this is probably the biggest problem about thrifting, is that unfortunately it's not for everybody's shape and size.
Yeah, that's a bad point. But have you ever done it? Have you ever been, any kinds of shop like this, thrifting here in Milano, in other cities? Have you ever been there? Have you ever bought? For example, I've been many times to Humana Vintage. That is actually near my house here in Milan, but never bought anything. I don't know. But I have many friends that actually do that, so I think it's just something about my.
I think you should like search because there are a lot of stuff, and the only way in which you can actually find something is to search. Like I remember that when I was like in Paris, probably there are more shops, they are bigger, it's
Markets
more
also.
common as Paris, London, while in Milan is still something that is not that common, but it's growing.
I think one thing that I would like in every thrift or vintage shop is like an option to customize a piece, like if you can repair it or tailor it to your body, because sometimes you find like an amazing, I don't know, Mugler jacket or an amazing piece that you love, it's in your size, you want it tighter, somewhere, or you want, like, that's something that we should encourage. Like, I know that startups always focus on repairing the new or repairing the quasi new, but not these pieces. And we should also like maybe that might help also like behavior and consuming more of already made and vintage clothes.
Yeah, sure. I believe that one of the best investment you can make on what you're wearing is getting it tailored, especially if maybe you have a pair of jeans that you love, or pants in general that are maybe a tiny bit too large, a tiny bit too long. Like literally, you don't need even to spend a lot of money to get it done. I got my pants taken in like a couple of weeks ago, and then 2 of them I had to redo the hem. And I think I paid $20,
which is a good, it's a good amount if you're repairing something.
Yeah.
I mean, I taking it in the pants it's a bit of like, for example, like doing the hem, I think it was probably like maybe €5 per pair of pants. Which again, I think that's like something that you can spend money on, and it will make you wear the garment more because it fits you better and you feel better in it. It doesn't even need to be a very expensive type like garment. As long as it fits you well, I think you're going to wear it more.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think it's sometimes said also the fact that maybe I don't know, for example, my mom, when she wants to wear something because she likes it and she wants to buy that, she's good, the, I don't know how to say in English, tailor, she can for example, to put the buttons and tighten the clothes. She's good in these kind of things, so she can basically buy that and then just adjust on herself, and that's something I completely can do. And that's pretty sad. Maybe we can, if we could just try to understand and learn how to do these kind of things, that would be like a good solution. Yeah, so
we do this for the questions. Maybe it was a really nice chat, but I'm seeing lots of people reacting too.
Yeah, they're saying they agree.
Austerity. Oh, I love that. Anything sustainable always sounds very austere and judgy. The other day, actually, I was reading this article on Vogue, and it was talking about how, ethical people or people that buy from ethical brands are mean girls and they judge everybody else. That's such a true thing. It's like it's so easy when you work or when you can afford like better, more ethical clothes or like more ethical brands which have a higher price point to judge everybody else. So that's like another thing that it's a no judgment area. We should really focus on that. Like you cannot be a mean girl if you and I hear lots of those, even with activists sometimes, like big famous activists sitting at huge conferences judging everybody else and like pointing fingers. That's not it's counterproductive. Ultimately people are not going to listen to you. You got to make them part of the conversation. I think that's also something else that we have to keep in mind.
Yeah, and Majdouline, if we want to conclude, I will say another interesting point is that sustainability can be interpreted in many ways, and we talk about secondhand and vintage and materials, but there is another kind of sustainability. There is the social sustainability.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure, the social aspect, social, you can cover many things, don't you? Like you can cover the basic human rights that any, UN convention covers, or there are, there are even aspects within the materials like transparency, for instance. Now I think that brands are really stressed to get to know the sources of fibers because most likely they don't have visibility on where the farm or where the fibers come from, and in those gray area in the supply chain that the consumers often don't care about in fashion as they care about in, for instance, food. Which we have a different perception of food. Now we want to know where it comes from. I think the same thing, the same stress should be for brands to let us
Yeah,
know
you're right.
where fiber comes from, because ultimately that says something about social practices too. And uncovering these gray areas in their value chain is extremely key. And now regulations are not there. I think that brands are a bit trying to find solutions on how can we do it, how can we have more guarantees, and how can we, because a value chain, before you can get a product in the market, the steps in the supply chain can be enormous, and not all brands know where this comes from. So I think as a consumer you need to be aware of this aspect. Once asking where the materials come from, even at country level, it's something that we can request and stress as consumers. I think that could drive like lots of change. And another aspect obviously is look for brands that are clear and transparent and extremely simple, not misleading in talking about how they work with their factories and their suppliers. So any code of conduct, any things about ethics and how they care about these aspects and how many audits they've made. An audit is a control. It's the brand checking the factory where the goods are being made. So how often do they do them? How many do they do? The percent, like, as all of these figures, sometimes you can find them in often in like CSR pages of the brands. I know it takes more time, but when you are buying a computer or when you're buying a piece of clothing that's dear to your heart, this is something that you should care about. You don't want.
Totally.
It takes 5 minutes to check that, and once we check it, once we know what's going on, we can then say, I like this, I don't like that, I want this. It's the I want that's missing. No, consumer need to
You're
want,
right.
need
Yeah,
to
you're
sense
right.
that.
Yeah, you're right. But I think that's the problem because, for example, I don't know if some of our listeners want to share with us the fact that if they take the the ethnicity aspect in consideration when purchasing clothes, because sometimes maybe we're not well, I would say nowadays we're more aware of these kind of things. For example, I remember when the True Cost documentary, I don't know if anyone has watched that on Netflix, came out. It was like 2015. We were like, it was like a kind of shock, because all the all those news about these kind of things, and there was a kind of pretty new thing. So I would say this is something that is coming out like now in the last few days. Last few years.
But see the impact that the documentary had on the whole industry. I mean, like that's when brands started wanting certifications like SAA 1000 or ISOs, or so something as simple as a documentary can change the world. So we can do much better
Yeah.
from being much more critical, for sure.
Also, I think a big issue is that brands often find ways to distract you from these kind of like social issues.
Yeah.
So, for example, they talk a lot about how they're sustainable in terms of materials, but you do not know anything about the production. So, for example, you do not know where the garment is made, how much the worker is paid, how many hours does the worker pay, right? Which is, I mean, it's a big point. It's a big issue. We need to be more aware of it also, because it's something that is far away from us. We don't think about it, which it's sad. We need to be more aware of each other. We need to think more about it, about the other. We need to think that like everybody needs to live in a dignified way.
Yeah, you're right.
Everybody needs to have a livable wage. We need to be sure that no children are working; they're actually in school.
Yeah,
So
you're right.
this is a huge issue, and I think that sometimes with sustainability, brands find ways to kind of like overlook it, or like kind of like make it like a gray area, and people are like, oh, but it's sustainable for clothes, like for the materials, it must be sustainable for this, for the social aspect and the ethical aspect as well. And I think like in general, because like maybe they are too, but they're not transparent about it, so it makes you it casts doubt about their sustainability on a social aspect.
Yeah.
So I think everybody needs to start caring more, like the brands need to be more transparent regarding that whole side of the production.
Yeah, you're so right. So guys, basically today we had a lot of reflection about this kind of thing, and I think that was a really interesting topic and a really interesting talk. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for joining us, Letizia, Eleonora, Majdouline. Thank you so much. It was so interesting having a chat with you and learning a lot of new things for me, and I'm sure also for our listeners. So thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.